We should never allow the government to decide what is acceptable speech and what is unacceptable speech. We should penalize behaviors, not opinions, and not speech. If you start trying to regulate speech, you start trying to regulate thoughts, start trying to regulate beliefs rather than behaviors, there's no way that you're not going to abridge the constitutional rights of millions of Americans.
Will the world ever learn the true facts about the Pleiades, who first visited the Earth in 1961 and abducted Betty and Barney Hill in Vancouver, British Columbia? The story has since been suppressed by another visitation that took place some 5,000 miles away in a suburb of Atlanta, Georgia in 1973. One night, a small boy of about 6 years of age was awakened by the sense of having been watched by someone in his room. In the gloomy moonlight, he saw the outline of a figure that had very large and black oval-shaped eyes looking at him. The figure was wearing a skin-tight style uniform that was metallic and dull but with no obvious zipper or belt. The figure had no hair or ears, no discernible nose or mouth. He stared at the figure for a long time and lost track of time. Before he knew the time, he awoke the next morning with no memory of what happened. Then, in the weeks that followed, he had to be taken to the hospital for an operation on his hands. When he returned home that day, he was asleep in his bed again, and as he opened his eyes, a figure appeared at the far wall. It was very different than the other alien he had seen during that gloomy night a few weeks before. The creature had a distinct pointed head and this time a mouth that was round. All of this was very blurry from the medicine he was given to help the pain he was suffering from the operation. Then, the last memory he had was seeing a third creature, not the same as the other two, directly in his face. It was pale white with two yellow and green iris eyes darting fast from side to side. He saw no background around him, it was a pure white light. The eyes were sunk into a cranium that was indented from the rest of its head. It looked exactly like Betty and Barney Hill's creatures they saw in 1961. Then, after seeing this creature, he passed out. He never saw them again, but he always remembered the experience. Today at age 54, this man now relives these memories every day, trying to put together what he saw and to try telling the world about his experience. In a society that doesn't have open minds to the unreal and the supernatural, will this ever be told to an ever-changing world? You may ask why he didn't tell MUFON, the Mutual Unidentified Flying Objects National Organization, about his experience. He did, but from trepidation he chose not to be hypnotized, fearing more memories might be too traumatic for him. The house in College Park is today inaccessible from the public, because the residence is occupied by a black family. The only pictures that exist are those he found on the internet, and those were very rare indeed to find. The irony of this story is that many other things happened in this house, including the sighting of an apparition or ghost. The same year in 1973, the family visited a small coastal town in Nova Scotia. They went to an abandoned house on a hilltop in a village called Freeport, some 30 miles from Digby. In this house was a pair of sea captain lamps, one of which they brought back with them to Georgia. In the weeks after, things started happening in the house they had never experienced before. Footsteps upstairs when no one was there, cold spots in the hallway where the same lamp was placed, and then the final event of seeing the apparition one night. In the hallway, a misty and translucent figure moved across the doorway where the 6-year-old boy was sleeping. He pinched himself to prove he wasn't dreaming this. That definitely hurt to feel the pain. He knew this was real. The figure looked at him. The eyes were black holes and the figure appeared to be wearing a hat. Very slowly, the figure moved out of his sight down the hallway. He never forgot that experience. His parents were in the bed sleeping with him. He tried to wake them up, they wouldn't budge from their slumber. Do you believe that Kerry Guffey's role in Close Encounters of the Third Kind was a coincidence or in any way similar to this boy's experience 4 years before in Georgia? Kerry Guffey was found for the role in Douglasville, Georgia in 1976. 3 years after the sightings in this house. Whether you believe this or not, the story is true. To this day, no one ever has heard about this story until I began posting this on my YouTube channel. If you want to know more, leave a comment and I'll try getting back in touch with you about this story.
Famous Hollywood director, Steven Spielberg, goes on the offensive by releasing a sequel to his infamous sci-fi classic, Close Encounters of the Third Kind. Coming this Christmas in 1978, the most talked about motion picture event since the Star Wars Holiday Special. Spielberg calls the film, Little Boy Lost. It is a true story of a 6-year-old boy who saw and was abducted in his room one night by extraterrestrials, now believed to have been the Pleiades, who Betty and Barney Hill saw in 1961 while driving in Vancouver, British Columbia. If you ever had any doubts about alien abduction, you won't anymore after watching this motion picture. Critics are saying this is the most intense film ever made by Spielberg since his horror classic, Jaws, in 1975. The film was based on Jay Anson's book under the same title and promises to keep the overall plot based on his teleplay. Anson is most remembered for his work in the Amityville Horror, a book that is supposedly in the works to be released in 1979 by American International Pictures. "Don't be afraid, they won't hurt you" is the most famous quote of this film, and you won't be sleeping anytime soon after you leave the movie theater. This film is rated PG, parental guidance suggested. Released by Columbia Pictures Industries.
Coming soon to a theater near you, the astonishing story of a 6-year-old boy who was abducted during the summer of 1972 in Atlanta, Georgia. The book by Jay Anson has made the bestsellers list for more than 82 weeks now across the nation. Coming this Christmas in 1978 from Columbia Pictures. This film is based on true events and inspired Steven Spielberg to cast Cary Guffey in the motion picture sci-fi classic, Close Encounters of the Third Kind. Now the story that inspired Spielberg is coming to your theater. Get your tickets now. Steven Spielberg, goes on the offensive by releasing a sequel to his infamous sci-fi classic, Close Encounters of the Third Kind. Coming this Christmas in 1978, the most talked about motion picture event since the Star Wars Holiday Special. Spielberg calls the film, Little Boy Lost. It is the true story of a 6-year-old boy who saw and was abducted in his room one night by extraterrestrials. Now believed to have been the Pleiades, who Betty and Barney Hill saw in 1961 while driving in Vancouver, British Columbia. If you ever had any doubts about alien abduction, you won't anymore after watching this motion picture. Critics are saying this is the most intense film ever made by Spielberg since his horror classic, Jaws, in 1975. The film was based on Jay Anson's book under the same title and promises to keep the overall plot based on his teleplay. Anson is most remembered for his work in the Amityville Horror, a book that is supposedly in the works to be released in 1979 by American International Pictures. "Don't be afraid, they won't hurt you" is the most famous quote of this film, and you won't be sleeping anytime soon after you leave the movie theater. This film is rated PG, parental guidance suggested. Released by Columbia Pictures Industries.
Show me reality. TV.
Where my hobbits at? Play Lord of the Rings. Play my Straight Out of the Shire playlist.
I want to see the king. Find LeBron.
Search more cartoons.
Play The Last OG.
Take me to the streets. Play Sesame Street.
Me want more cookies.
قديش عمرك؟ 4 سنين.
Find the things you love with the voice command. Introducing AT&T TV with live TV and access to streaming apps. Plug in and watch with easy self-setup. Shipped directly to you.
They've reported from around the world, challenged the powerful, and they bring all of this to every story that breaks.
We've got breaking news, and it's good news.
And touches your heart.
How do you even say thank you? Thank you is not big enough.
I made this.
The images shocked the world. Relentless bombings. Stunned survivors.
peculiar thing about this.
You didn't build that. Somebody else made that hat. You didn't build that. Somebody else made that hat.